Got a house on fire there. Ain't nothing left of that thing. Pray that nobody died.
I want you guys around that post.
Oh.
Powerful aftershock has struck near New Caledonia in the South Pacific. The magnitude 6.6 quake hit only a few hours after a magnitude 7.5 earthquake struck 160 kilometers off the small island of Marais. It's prompted a tsunami warning in the region. At least 5 aftershocks have already hit the French territory.
This is one of the main battlegrounds of weeks of protests over the fuel tax rise that's enveloped the whole country. Cars and buildings burned, shops smashed and looted, and some of the most iconic monuments in Paris trashed. The number of injured keeps rising. You would have to be deaf not to hear the wrath of the French people, said the Prime Minister. And it seems the government has heard the cries of the yellow vests to some degree.
I'm suspending these tax measures for 6 months. No tax should put the unity of the nation in danger.
These concessions come even though just last week President Macron was adamant that he wouldn't capitulate to the voice of the street.
I distinguish between fellow citizens and their demands and thugs. I will not concede anything to those who want destruction and disorder.
But now the government has given in to some of the demands of the protesters. The yellow vests have tasted blood and are now hungry for more.
We won't settle for crumbs. We want the whole baguette.
This is an NBC News special report. Here's Lester Holt.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're coming on the air with breaking news from Wall Street. A steep drop in the stock market today. The Dow is down just a little less than 800-point range at the closing bell, in large part because of renewed concerns over President Trump's trade war with China. CNBC's Sue Herrera is tracking all this for us. A 3% loss in all the indices. What's behind all this, Sue?
You hit it right on the head, Lester. Basically, the market is worried that the trade war that we have going on between the U.S. and China is not receding. As a matter of fact, it seems to be ratcheting up. Even though the president has said he has come to some sort of an agreement with China, the market isn't sure that it's any different than what we saw last week. That has led to worries about global growth. Will it continue or not? All of that hit the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P 500, which is a broader market index, and the NASDAQ very hard, down almost 800 points on the Dow, almost 90 points on the S&P, and 283 on the NASDAQ. The trade deal with China is the key for the market, but it's not the only factor affecting stocks today. Interest rates, the difference between short-term rates and long-term rates, the 2-year note and the 30-year, which you use to get a mortgage, that's been narrowing, and that usually indicates a slowdown in U.S. economic growth. Add to that the fact that the stock market is closed tomorrow in remembrance of President Bush, and all of that led to kind of a selling frenzy in the market today, Lester.
And we had note the closing bell sounded about a minute and a half ago. Those numbers you're looking at will fluctuate a bit, but essentially down around 800 points. Sue, thanks. Let's bring in NBC's Hallie Jackson at the White House. Hallie, this is apparently built on somewhat of the notion the White House may have oversold what it accomplished in that meeting with China.
You got that right, Lester. And if investors wanted to hear reassuring words from the White House or from the president today, they really didn't get it. You started the day with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin coming out and talking about if the negotiations come through and if there is a real agreement that's made with China on trade wars. And those two ifs, not something that investors were looking for. And then later in the day, President Trump tweeted, "I am a tariff man," essentially threatening to slap those tariffs back on Beijing if, in fact, he and President Xi cannot come to terms over the next 90 days. Now, White House officials do point to that 3-month period to say, hey, we have some time. We are trying to work something out. But that is a little bit of a different tone than what we heard initially as the president was coming back from the G20 in Argentina. I was on Air Force One when the president told reporters that this was an incredible deal, and if it goes through, possibly one of the biggest deals ever made. So overselling it perhaps, Lester, and that's what you're seeing reflected in the stock markets. Remember, this is a president who really likes to tout when the markets are doing well. He likes to point at the strength of the economy as an indication of his own strength he sees as president. Of course, there's always the caveat. If you're going to sort of tie your wagon when the markets are up, that happens when the markets go down as well. We're asking the White House for more reaction, and we'll bring it to you as soon as we get it, Lester.
Yeah, things work both ways. All right, Hallie Jackson at the White House. Thank you. Full details on this.
Of its founders.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.